I was less afraid of people's perceptions of me and their opinions of me because I realized like they're going to die someday too. So whatever. Why would I live my life by that?
Who do we know, or who do we need to know, and who do we need to get around us that's going to help push us, pace us, and help us with the things that we don't even think about?
I trained 1,232 hours to be on top of that mountain for 10 minutes.
So welcome to the Relevant Development Podcast. I am your host, Juan Alvarado. Thank you for joining us today. Today, my guest is Jenn Drummond. Jenn, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Excellent.
So you have done some crazy and some amazing things that, if I'm just being upfront and honest, maybe the first person to meet you would be like, you're lying. Really? So can you let our listeners know why and how Jenn is so damn badass?
I would say most people would probably attribute that to having a world record for being the
Hey.
first female to climb the second highest point on each of the 7 continents.
So freaking crazy. So who pissed you off
Yeah.
that gave you that motivation to be like, I'm going to leave everyone and everybody behind and I'm going to be the first to do this?
Yeah. It was an evolution of events, which I think that's how all of us get into trouble these days.
Right.
So I was in a horrific car crash in 2018 that should have taken my life and didn't. That actually woke me up to just how amazing life is and what a gift it is. And so I kind of got out of autopilot and realized, man, I don't have forever on this planet. What are things that I want to see, do, experience, explore, try, test? And so 2019 became a big year of just the bucket list of all the things I wanted to do before I die. 2020, I was turning 40. So I was looked over my list. I'm like, what's something that I should do now that'd be harder to do later in life? And climb a mountain was on there. Then fast forward a little bit, COVID entered the scene in the beginning of 2020. And so I was training for a mountain named Ama de Blanc, which is the Paramount Pictures logo mountain. If you've seen the movie by Paramount. Yes.
Oh.
And I was a homeschool teacher to 7 kids because, like school shut down and all of our kids got in our laps. And one of my boys was struggling with this math homework and I was trying to convince him that we do hard things. He's like, if we do hard things, why are you climbing a mountain called I'm a Dumb Blonde instead of a real mountain like Mount Everest? Yes.
He's the witty one. Where is he? Where's he in the line of kids?
He's my 5th boy, right?
Oh.
So I'm like, Ama de Blanc, not I'm a dumb blonde, but thank you. We'll look at
Sweet.
Everest.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm like, cute. That's awesome. So then we looked at Everest and I'm like, you know what? If he thinks Everest is the hardest mountain in the world, I'm going to climb it and show him that whatever Everest is, we're capable of climbing. And then I hired a coach to train me for Everest. And that coach gave me a book about becoming an uphill athlete. And in the front of that book was a lady who got a Guinness World Record for doing something in the Alps. I told my coach I could have done that. Like I could do that. I am not doing this homeschooling thing very well. And my kids would think I'm cool if I had a Guinness World Record. So I wish I would have been there for that. And he goes, I'll think of something. And then a few weeks later, he called me back and he's like, I have it. I think you should climb the 7-second summits. And I didn't know what those were. So I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, listen, he goes, it's the second highest point on each of the 7 continents. It's harder than the first 7. Only 1 male has done it. So you would be the first female. And he goes, think about it. 7 continents, 7 mountains, 7 children. Sounds like a jackpot.
Wow. He made that alignment work with you real good.
Yeah, I'm like, man, you got me. Okay, fine. I haven't slept in a tent before, but we'll figure this out.
So two questions. Was this outside of, it's outside of everybody's wheelhouse, but have you done, like, prior to that, what had been like the hardest thing that you've done, or how far have you pushed yourself prior to this?
I've always been an athlete. So I think athletes are used to pushing themselves, right? I played college soccer and I was a gymnast growing up. I had climbed one mountain, the Grand Teton in Jackson Hole. I remember having a great experience, which is why that was on my bucket list to begin with. But I was by no means a mountaineer.
How much I've learned this. Sometimes I think that, God has blessed us with kids because it teaches us something. And there's times where I'm talking and disciplining my kids and I'm like, oh my gosh, the words that I have for you are not for you, they're for me. So how much was your son, right? The 5th son, how much is he like you, or is he like his father?
Oh, maybe a little
I'm
bit
going
like
somewhere
me.
with it though. Is he more like
Yeah,
you or is he more like dad?
he's probably more like me.
Okay, and so I was gonna say, like, how much of him was your internal voice saying when you were saying, "We do hard things," and he was like, "Oh, yeah? We do hard things?" Like, how much of that was you talking to you instead of you talking to your son?
Oh, was it like, I think that message came at me because that's how I would hear it,
Right.
right?
And
I mean,
no
like,
and no other better person to probably make that connection than the person who is just like you, right?
oh, totally.
That's awesome. I love that in hindsight, he was like the mini you saying, "Hey, we do hard things. Let's get our ass up and do something. Let's prove you think you're proving it to your kids, but you're really proving it to yourself." So, what take me through the steps that you had to take in this journey that ultimately proved to yourself and to everybody else that you have it in you to do hard things.
Yeah, well, I will say Ama de Blanc is actually a harder climb than Everest. It's
Mm,
just Everest is more known. So
got
for
it.
me, I realized there's so much of our lives that we're doing things that maybe others don't understand. And
Mm,
so I wanted to climb Everest because it's something he understood. So it was a way for me to relate with him and have
mm,
that conversation. I was climbing Ama, which was hard. It's more technical than Everest for sure. Just because I after the accident, I was less afraid of people's perceptions of me and their opinions of me because I realized, like, they're gonna die someday too, so whatever. Why would I live my life by that? And I was
right.
more concerned about running out of time. And all of a sudden, this world became this huge playground filled with all kinds of things that I wanted to explore and see and do. And now I was like, how do I get all this in? Because I'm 40 and there's a lot of things to go see and do.
Right, for sure. What was something that you felt that you didn't know that you had to learn that you ended up learning in that process? Because you said you had never slept in a tent before. So was that one of them, or is there something else that you're like, I didn't know that this was part of it, but I learned.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole adventure has opened up so many doors. A lot of times when we set goals, maybe the goal isn't even the goal, but the goal is what
Mm,
needed to get us on the path to have the experience that we're here to have. And
mm,
so just allowing myself to get curious again and understand, like, we're going to be beginners on a lot of things in life.
right.
And so learning how to accept that beginner's mindset and understand all these environments are different and just being able to, I think the experience of life is experiencing ourselves in the physical body doing things. It's not
Mm,
meant to be played in our head. And so for me, it's been very fun just learning where my limits are, what my stories are, what I do when I get into different circumstances and how I respond. Not from a judgmental standpoint, but from a, oh, wow, that's interesting.
right. So out of this journey on this path, you have developed some pillars and some steps and a book, right? To that
Yeah.
helps with what? Bring me in on that.
Yeah, so I wrote a book called Break Proof: 7 Strategies to Build Resilience and Achieve Your Life Goals. And it
Mm,
was interesting because I've built a business where I hired myself out of a job and then I became a stay-at-home mom. And then this accident kind of put me back into the pursuit again, but a different angle and a different way. And when I was climbing the mountains, I realized, oh my goodness, so many things that happen on the mountain actually happen in our everyday lives when we're trying to achieve whatever we're set out to do. And so the mountain was just a great metaphor. So I take the reader to each expedition and highlight a lesson that I've learned on that expedition that they can apply to their own lives as they take their pursuits to the summit.
out of those different stopping points in your book, what do you think is maybe not the first step? I mean, it could be, but what is like the pivotal point? Like you need to reach this if you're going to break the old you and get into the new you.
Yeah. I think one of the big lessons from the book is big mountains take big teams.
Mm,
And so a lot of us have these big goals, but we're trying to go at it by ourselves. You do not have enough energy to get all the way to the top with all the weight of all those decisions and everything else. Like I think of myself when I was climbing Everest, which is one of the tallest mountain in the world. I have a team back home taking care of the kids. You have a team that's taking care of food. You have the team that's taking care of different parts of the mountain. You actually have a Sherpa that's climbing with you so that you're not carrying a full load. They can help carry the weight and all these different pieces that allow you to get to the top and actually enjoy it. right? And so I could have gotten to the top probably without a Sherpa, but I would have been way more tired, way more exhausted, way less confident because I don't have that person next to me checking in, like, is the oxygen right? Am I warm enough? This next section's going to be cold. Like, just having that mentor right next to you allows you to just go so much further with less resources.
That's a good. How were you able to apply that, or how would I apply that lesson in my life, or moving forward?
I mean, depending on who you are and where you are in your journey. But if you feel you're running out of steam, you're feeling you're running out of motivation, you feel like, man, I set this big goal and I just don't know what my next step is. And I'm feeling like I set it too big. I want to start settling for less. That's a cue to check in with yourself and say, hey, do I have enough help? Or am I trying to do all this by myself?
Right. I think that's big. My friend KD did a podcast on this, and then I did some research on it. And this is what it reminds me of: is there's the one of the fastest marathon runners runs with a team, right? And
Yes.
they run around and they pace the run, and they run to the left and the right and to the front, and they can only run as fast as this marathon runner for 4 or 5 miles, and then they have to break off, and then a van comes with new fresh legs and they run around them, and then they continue for next two, and they just rotate, and they're there for the other person. Like this mentor was there for you to push you. It's your race. It's not their race, but it's your race. So who do we know, or who do we need to know, and who do we need to get around us that's going to help push us, pace us, and help us with the things that we don't even think about, right? I mean,
Right.
something as simple as the air that we breathe, right? How tough was that as you got higher to breathe? Like, you watch movies and you see stuff, like, how hard was it? Because we can only imagine, and we can't even really fathom what that's like. What was that like?
Yeah, no, it's interesting because your brain is signaling you to move your leg, and your leg feels like a lead brick. Okay, and it's just because there's not enough red blood cells to operate in that environment where there's not enough oxygen, right?
Mhm.
So it's just everything is so much more work than what it should be. Now, as you acclimatize, which is another thing I learned from climbing, I don't know why when I first got into it, I thought, oh, you just start at the base and it takes you a couple weeks to get to the top and it takes you a little bit to get back down. And that's why it takes so long to climb Everest. The reality is like when you go to climb Everest, you're climbing Everest a couple times because you have to acclimatize. So you're going to go up to a point where your body fails. And wherever that failure happens, you try to have lunch there, actually sit there as long as you can. And then you go all the way back down to base camp. And you're at base
Mm.
camp for the next 3 to 4 days. And when you're at base
Wow.
camp, your body physiologically changes. The
Mm.
stress that you had from the lack of oxygen environment signals to your body, hey, there's not enough oxygen here. We need to produce more red blood cells. So 3 to 4 days later, when you go up the mountain, you can go up way further without as much effort because your body adapted to the environment that wasn't performing in before. And I think we can use that analogy a lot when we're building a business or different pursuits that we're on. Sometimes we're acclimatizing. We're going to hit a point
Mm.
of failure. You're going to head back home. What's working? What's not? What do you need to shift? What do you know now to go further down the trail to get closer to your summit?
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes those steps back help you with the momentum moving forward. How much did this triumph for you impact your kids? Like, this was your victory, right? They didn't climb it, you did, but how much was it helpful for them?
Oh, I mean, it was helpful for all of us,
Mm.
right? I think we sometimes don't realize how important it is to do big, hard things because if we're doing it, we inspire other people to do it.
Yep.
Now, I'll give you like a simple example. So I'm training for Everest. I have 7 kids. I run a business. I'm trying to climb this mountain, right? There's a lot of things competing for my time. So for me to get the training in, it wasn't like I had 8 hours to go hike up a mountain every day, right? And so sometimes I would have to watch my son's soccer game, bring a 12-inch step, put a backpack on full of water bottles, and just go up and down that 12-inch step his entire game.
Wow.
Well, okay,
Wow.
every other mom is sitting on a bench watching their kid playing. I'm doing this exercising. Well, guess what? By the end of the season, there's a handful of moms that worked out with me.
Mm.
And it was because I did it, and they're like, "Hey, well, why I might as well work out too instead of sit here for an hour and a half. This makes
Right.
sense. I'll bring a step." And so all of a sudden, now you have a handful of moms that are doing this exercising together. It makes it way more fun. Everybody's getting a little more bang for the buck out of the game.
Right.
And it's how important it is that when we do us, we affect those around us, whether we
Yeah,
notice it or not.
for sure. I love that because and this is what I like to do with the podcast because not everybody, because I see things. I have someone that I look up to, and he sees things in pictures as people are talking, and I'm starting to get into this thing, and I can see lessons behind the lessons, and so just hope people understand that sometimes when you want to give up, right, you're taking your steps back, you're going and coming back down the mountain to go back to camp to figure things out. You have to continue to go that next day. You have to go to practice with the 12-inch step, with the water bottles, because you never know who's watching, and sometimes your triumph is also somebody else's victory or motivation to push. Somebody asked me the other day, how do I motivate myself? Like, I know how to motivate myself, but how do I motivate others? And it's like there's a such thing as a secondhand high, secondhand smoke, and there's secondhand motivation. If I get so motivated, other people can get motivated too. And you are a clear example of that, not only to your kids, but to the moms at the soccer games as well. That when you feel like giving up, understand that you need to go not only for yourself, but for the other people that you don't know that are actually watching you, because you are making them strong by osmosis in that sense.
Yeah.
Um, is there, I just want to ask, is there going to be in the future a part two to this book, or what comes after this book? Because I'm sure between the summit, the book, there's a lot more lessons that you've learned through this. Is there a part two to the book in the future,
There could be.
or another mountain?
Yeah, right? The book was a mountain in and of itself. If anybody's
I
written a
bet.
book, they understand how much work that is to bring it to print and to make sure that it's valuable for the reader and a good use of their time. So the book was a big undertaking. It's definitely gotten me on stages to speak and connect with audiences, which I really enjoy. So I'm going to let it run its course, and I kind of like to be outside adventuring more than inside writing. So we'll see. I'm sure there's another book in there because a lot of stuff got tabled and like, you have enough material for 2 to 3 more books. I'm like, I
Mm.
just don't know if I have enough mindset to sit here and do those next 2 to 3 books, but thank
Right.
you.
That was going to be my next question, was there something, because I understand I'm trying to write myself, and there's some things that I know that have to be in, and I know that there's going to be stuff that gets cut out. Is there a lesson that maybe is not in the book that maybe we should know, or that you would want people to learn from your journey?
I don't know if it's highlighted as much as I had hoped it been highlighted in the standpoint of enjoy the journey.
Mm,
Right? Like, I think we sometimes it's so easy to get focused on that destination, and then all of a sudden you get to that destination and you realize it was all the little moments before it that really make up the story of our lives. I think sometimes we get lost in it because we're so focused on where we're going.
yeah.
And a friend of mine told me early on in the journey, he had sailed his boat around the world. And he's like,
Wow.
just remember that this is going to be done someday.
Mm,
And so take in every moment as deeply as much as you can, because someday this pursuit's going to be done and you're going to miss it.
yeah.
And I finished the climbs June 1st of 2023. And I remember like coming home and there was sadness, right? I mean, I was excited, of course, but there was this sadness that that pursuit is over. That phase of
Mm,
my life has been closed. The chapter's done. And it just really hit home on these days, these mundane, ordinary days are really, they're really something special to accumulate.
how long did you stay at the top? Once you're talking about that destination, how long were
Yeah.
you at the destination?
Yeah, that's I just had a speech yesterday that I talked about this. When I climbed Everest, I was on the top of Everest for 10 minutes. I trained 1,232 hours to be on top of that mountain for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And I loved the training, right? Like that's why it worked because I like being outdoors. I like fresh air. I like challenge. I like overcoming things. I feel alive in those moments. But if I didn't enjoy the 1,232 hours before, I mean, man, you missed out, right?
Right, right. And that just goes to show you the lesson that you want people to take away is I heard a guy that I look up to, his name's Preston Morrison, and just the other day he had said, it's not about the place, right? The destination. It's not about the place, it's about the path and the people and the person you become on the path. It's like you were there for 10 minutes, but how long was the hike, the journey, that summit, that walk up, that climb, and the training? Like, so my next question to you is kind of top down or bottom up from, take it how you will, your feet, your legs, your core, your physique, your health, your mind, inside, outside. Who did you become, or what changed in this journey on this, and this path to the place?
I think every part of you changes.
Mm.
I don't know how much stays the same, right? If you look back over, I mean, it took me 2.5 years to finish this pursuit. I
Wow.
am a different parent. I've been to different countries, different cultures, different ways, different things. It's allowed me to just tighten the grip on my perspective and allow more to show up. Your body shifts after 2.5 years of training and eating healthy, right? I
Uh-huh.
like at every level. Your mindset shifts because you build more confidence as you overcome more things. You become less tolerant for things that don't feel authentic because you don't have time for them in your
Mm.
life.
That part. Wow. What does what does Jen today tell the Jen that's getting ready to start the training? What does she tell her?
Like, just have fun. I mean, again, I like look back if there's a message that I could tell my younger self is enjoy it, giggle, be silly, allow it to have a little more flexibility in it.
So there's a man, a woman, a kid, young teen sitting there and that says, "I know what to do, but I don't know what's next, and I'm scared." What advice do you have for them?
However old they are, they've never known what's next.
Mm.
And look where they've gotten to.
That's a bar and a half. Wow. Elaborate on that. That's good.
Yeah, I'm just like, I mean, I didn't know what was next a year ago or 2 years before that. I mean, before my car accident, I never even dreamed of climbing Everest. So I don't think we ever know what's next. So we
Mm.
just have to keep doing what's right in front of us well. We can plan, we can hope that we can predict what's going to happen, but we don't know. And the real truth of it, no one predicted COVID,
Mm. Right.
right? So if we've gotten this far with what's going on, I'm sure we're going to be fine if we continue.
Solid. How can somebody get the book or connect with you, things like that?
Yeah. So the book is available on Amazon right now. So please buy it there. Jenn Drummond, Jenn, and then Drummond, Drummond. And there's a bunch of pre-order bonuses right now. Highly recommend doing that because of all that fun goodies. You can find me on my website, jendrummond.com. And I have challenges like we do an Everest challenge where you climb the height of Everest from the comfort of your home. So that's kind of
Wow.
fun. Yeah.
Cool.
And then I have some stuff on speaking engagements. And we do have this fun little video that shows the Milky Way going over Everest Base Camp. Whenever life gets hard and overwhelming and you feel like there's just too much going on, that always gives me the perspective of like, I'm this little person on this big planet that circles this entire galaxy. So if
Mm.
you want to text the word Everest to 33777, you'll get that for free. So please do that.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. How many times do you ever go through something hard or something that shouldn't be hard, right? Somebody pisses you off at the grocery store or whatever. You're like, I climbed Everest. I climbed Everest. I'm bigger than this. How many times does that happen throughout your day? Like that you have to remind yourself.
Yeah, we use that term Everest in our house a lot now. And so if any of my kids say it's my Everest, I know that's
Mm.
their hardest thing going on in their life. And so that
So
allows
good.
me to make sure that I'm treating that as an Everest for them
Mm.
because that's their Everest, right? So, and if I'm doing something hard or whatever, and I'm like, hey guys, I'm in my Everest right now, they know, oh, we got to give mom a little more grace or there's a little more space that she needs to handle what she's doing. So just having that language allows you to communicate and be clear with what you need and what's going on in your life. And I find that very helpful.
That's not just helpful, that's powerful. Like to be I hope everybody's catching like the underlined like lessons there, the communication, right? The understanding of one another and just having that verbiage of, hey, this is my Everest, right? And it could be something that's not their Everest is not your Everest, right? It could be a math test or studying
Yeah.
or whatever, a relationship, right? Boyfriend, girlfriend thing or whatever. And right now I'm in my Everest for that to connect and say, "Oh, I need to give grace," or give them a little bit more room is awesome. Before I let you go, what a person, place, book, whatever it was, or has it been? What has helped you raise the bar?
My kids,
Mhm.
right? They're watching. They're watching what we do, and I'm modeling what it looks like to be a parent. And before the accident, I was definitely modeling this person that put their life on hold until their kids got older. And then after the accident, I realized like I don't want my kids to be a mom and put their life on hold. I want them to be a mom and to do all the things that set their heart on fire. So I'm going to start modeling that and give them that example of what life can look like. And I think it's really important that we do ourselves and own who we are because it gives everybody permission around us to do the same thing. And so my kids are my accountability partners for sure.
That's awesome. Great way to raise the bar for you. How can our listeners? What advice you have for them to help them raise the bar?
Yeah. I do a lot of trigger meditation. So pick a trigger in your life. Maybe it's every single time you open a door. Maybe it's every single time you get a glass of water. Maybe it's every single time you sit down to eat. And in that trigger, give yourself a few deep breaths to disconnect from the world and reconnect to yourself and remind yourself, like, I have a choice in how I show up or how I do this thing or how I want this to be. What in my power do I have right now to make it better, more enjoyable, to level up?
Beautiful. Jen, thank you so much for being here today. Your story, the way that you've come about, not only as a mom, but as a woman and as an athlete and now climber. And did you take anything? That's what I wanted to ask. Did you take anything up there? Like, did you leave anything up on top?
You do not leave anything on the mountains
No, you
because
can't.
you can't, and you don't want to, right? This is
Right.
nature and it's not meant to have anything there.
It's just all kinds of stuff, a toy, a cookie.
Yeah, I did, like, everybody normally brings something, so I always brought a picture of my kids. So on the
Mm,
top of every mountain, I took a photo with them, with me at the top because they're always with me. But yeah, and some people will have little trinkets and things like that, but you always bring everything down because you don't wanna
got it.
leave a trace.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank
Yeah.
you for being who you are. Thank you for listening to the challenge of your son, because without those steps, we wouldn't be here today learning from you. Thank you for being obedient in writing the book, because there's lessons to be learned that somebody out there needs, maybe myself or somebody, but somebody needed you to be authentically you. And thank you for doing that. Thank you for being here. Any last words for our listeners?
Enjoy the day and make a choice for you.
There it is there. Thank you so much, Jen, for being here. That is the Relevant Development Podcast. Don't forget to raise the bar and pull yourself to that next level. But you can't do that unless you raise that bar. In the description will be the link. Don't forget to text the code and connect with Jen so you can learn how to climb your Everest. Thank you so much, Jen.
Thank you.